When you think of anonymous networks, your mind probably jumps straight to, a Hollywood thriller.
Oh, absolutely. Like high-stakes espionage or whistleblowers passing encrypted files in the dead of night.
Exactly. You imagine political dissidents organizing protests under the nose of oppressive regimes, right? Just activists operating entirely in the shadows.
Yeah, it's usually viewed as this ultimate cloak of invisibility, basically protecting the most vital, dangerous, and, well, world-changing communications on the planet.
But what if the reality of this legendary digital underground is significantly less James Bond and a lot more people just trying to download a pirated episode of Desperate Housewives?
It's wild, but the gap between the mythology of privacy networks and the empirical data of what actually flows through their digital pipes is just staggering.
It really is.
Because when you build a system designed purely to hide its users, I mean, the architecture itself doesn't judge the nobility of the data it carries.
Right, it's completely agnostic, and that tension between noble intent and mundane reality is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we are unpacking a really fascinating and frankly eye-opening 2010 IEE research paper. It's titled Digging into Anonymous Traffic, a deep analysis of the Tor anonymizing network.
A classic paper in the field.
Yeah, and our mission today is to uncover the unvarnished truth of what actually flowed through Tor during this really pivotal era of the internet.
Right, contrasting that crucial life-saving intent of the system with the gritty, everyday, and surprisingly selfish reality of the people actually using it.
To set the stage for you, the listener, the findings in this paper will completely reframe how you think about digital privacy.
Oh, for sure. It changes how you view network architectures functioning under stress in the wild.
And most importantly, human behavior on the internet.
Because, as we will see, if you give humanity an impenetrable fortress of privacy, human nature basically dictates they'll use it to hide all sorts of things.
Usually driven by convenience rather than, actual survival.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can even look at what the researchers found in this study, we have to deal with the elephant in the room.
The massive ethical paradox.
Right. There is a fundamental paradox at the very heart of this research. How on earth do you study the traffic of a network specifically designed to be unstudiable?
And do it without breaking the rules and compromising the very users that the network is built to protect.
Exactly. It feels impossible.
Well, that paradox is the exact reason why, at the time this paper was published, very few researchers had dared to shed light on the Tor network.
Because of the technical barriers?
Technical barriers, yes, but mostly the ethical and legal aspects of logging anonymous traffic. There was this pervasive, almost dogmatic belief in the computer science research community at the time.
Which was what?
That anonymizing networks are strictly for freedom of speech and should remain an unexplored black box, full stop.
So you just don't look at it.
Right. The fear was that any attempt to peek inside might accidentally reveal sensitive information and put vulnerable people at physical risk.
And I get that. I mean, it almost feels like a betrayal of the system's core philosophy to even set up the monitoring equipment.
It does feel a bit dirty.
Yeah. If I am using a privacy tool, the last thing I want is a team of academics hooking up a wiretap, no matter how noble their intentions are.
What's fascinating here is that the authors of this paper confronted that hesitation head-on. They argued a counter-philosophy.
Okay, what was their argument?
They said understanding the artifacts and the actual flow of an anonymizing network is a mandatory prerequisite to ensuring its long-term security.
Oh, I see. So you can't protect what you don't understand.
Exactly. If the engineers maintaining Tor don't know how the network is being used, or more accurately, heavily misused, they cannot protect it from intrusive usage patterns that could destroy it.
Right, because a privacy network that crashes because of bandwidth hogs is completely useless to the dissident who desperately needs it.
Precisely. You can't smuggle out a document if the network is down because someone is downloading a movie.
So to understand how they manage this ethical wiretap, we first need to make sure you, the listener, have a solid mental model of how Tor actually works.
Good idea. The core mechanic here is something called onion routing.
Let's build that out.
Yeah.
If I open a standard web browser and go to a website, my computer basically draws a straight direct line to that server, right?
A direct connection. But Tor completely shatters that direct line. Tor stands for the onion router.
Right.
It's a circuit-based, low-latency anonymous communication service. The primary objective is to prevent anyone from linking you to the server you are talking to.
Anyone being like a hacker at a coffee shop or my internet service provider or even a government agency.
Exactly. When your Tor client software wants to connect to a website, it refuses to send data directly. Instead, it selects a complex, randomized path through the Tor network.
And the Tor network is just thousands of volunteer-run nodes all over the globe, right?
Yes, volunteer-run routers. And it doesn't just bounce around infinitely. It specifically chooses a chain of 3 distinct nodes.
Typically an entry node, a middle node, and an exit node.
You got it. And the onion aspect describes the encryption strategy. The messages you send are encrypted multiple times, layered one over the other.
So like layers of an onion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your client software encrypts the data first with the cryptographic key belonging to the exit node.
Okay.
Then it takes that locked package and encrypts it again with the key for the middle node.
And then a third time.
Yes, finally it takes that doubly locked package and encrypts it a third time with the key for the entry node.
Okay, so if we trace a data packet leaving my computer, it hits the entry node first.
Right.
The entry node peels off that outermost layer of encryption and sees the instruction, please send this locked package to this specific middle node.
But crucially, the entry node cannot read the data itself, and it has no idea what the final website destination is.
Right. The entry node only knows my IP address, because I connected to it, and the IP address of the middle node.
It just blindly passes the package along. Then the middle node receives it, uses its key to peel off the second layer of encryption.
And it finds instructions to send the innermost package to the exit node.
Exactly. The middle node knows who gave it the package, the entry node, and who it is giving it to the exit node. It knows nothing about you, the sender, or the final destination.
Which brings us to the final stop, the exit node.
Right. It peels off the final layer of encryption. Now, the data is in the clear, or at least in whatever format you originally sent it.
And then the exit node forwards it to the final destination, like Google or wherever.
Yep. The exit node knows the destination, and it can see the data payload, but it has absolutely no idea who the original sender was.
Because the middle node is the only entity it actually interacted with?
Exactly. No single node in the circuit holds all the puzzle pieces. That layered separation of knowledge is what provides the anonymity.
But for the researchers, this architecture presented a really unique opportunity. If they wanted to study what the network was being used for, they had to position themselves. Where?
At the very end of that chain, right at the exit nodes.
Because that is the one and only place in the entire Tor ecosystem where that final layer of onion encryption is stripped away.
Correct. It's where the actual raw data is visible before it heads out to the open internet.
So what was the scale of their operation? Did they just spin up one node?
No. For this study, the researchers instrumented and monitored 6 of their own Tor exit nodes.
6 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they set them up with the default exit policy, meaning they allowed standard traffic to flow through without aggressive filtering.
And how much bandwidth did they give them?
They announced 100 kilobytes per second of bandwidth for each node. And to avoid geographical bias, they distributed these servers globally.
Where were they located?
2 in the United States, 2 in Europe, specifically France and Germany, and 2 in Asia, located in Japan and Taiwan.
So a really solid global net. And once those exit nodes were live, they just let the traffic flow and started catching the data.
That was the plan.
Given that they're only providing a fraction of the network's total bandwidth, how much data are we actually talking about capturing here?
An immense volume. They monitored these nodes for a total of 23 days, split strategically across 2 different periods.
Why split it up?
To ensure their findings weren't just a temporary anomaly or, tied to a specific global event happening that week.
Makes sense. So what were the numbers?
The first data set, gathered over 1 week in December 2009, consisted of 600 gigabytes of data.
Wow, 600 gigs in a week.
And the second data set, gathered over 2 weeks in January and February 2010, amounted to 1.6 terabytes of data.
Over 1.5 terabytes of anonymous internet traffic. That is wild.
And just to clarify, nearly half of the raw traffic flowing through these servers was actually encrypted Tor traffic exchanged between Tor onion routers.
Oh, meaning their server was occasionally acting as a middle node, not just an exit node?
Exactly. So they had to filter all that out to focus purely on the exit traffic.
Right, so they are sitting on mountains of data flowing out of their exit nodes. The immediate technical challenge is figuring out what that data actually is.
Which is easier said than done.
Because in the old days of the internet, that was easy, right? You just looked at the port numbers. If I understand the history correctly, early internet traffic was very polite and organized.
It was incredibly regimented. Think of IP addresses as the street address of a massive apartment building, and ports as the individual door numbers within that building.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Every application had an assigned door. Port 80 was universally known as the door for unencrypted web traffic, HTTP.
Right.
Port 443 was the door for secure web traffic, HTTPS. Port 21 was the door for FTP, file transfers.
Which means if a researcher in the 1990s or early 2000s saw a data packet heading to port 80, they could confidently write down web browsing on their clipboard and move on.
Exactly. But by 2010, that honor system had completely broken down.
What caused the breakdown?
It was largely driven by the peer-to-peer file sharing wars.
Ah, the Napster and BitTorrent days.
Right. As internet service providers realized applications like BitTorrent were consuming massive amounts of their bandwidth, they started throttling traffic that used the standard BitTorrent ports.
So they just blocked the specific door number?
Exactly. In response, the developers of peer-to-peer applications got creative. They stopped using their assigned doors.
What did they do instead?
They designed their software to randomly pick port numbers every time they started up.
Oh.
Or worse, they began tunneling their traffic through port 80 to disguise it as standard web traffic.
Oh, wow. So simple port-based classification became completely obsolete for a study of this magnitude.
Completely useless.
You can no longer just look at the door number. You actually have to crack the box open and look at the cargo inside to know what you were dealing with.
That is the core of the methodology they utilized. Deep Packet Inspection, or DPI.
Deep packet inspection, how does that work?
It digs past the addressing header of the packet and examines the payload itself, the actual content.
It looks at the actual data.
Yes. It searches for specific digital signatures, byte pattern, or structural behaviors that uniquely identify the application that created the packet, regardless of what port it is using.
And what software did they use for this?
They implemented a modified version of an open-source DPI tool called OpenDPI for this heavy lifting.
Now, hold on. This brings us right back to the ethical paradox we started with.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
I mean, deep packet inspection literally means looking at the payload.
Yes, it does.
If I am using Tor, I am doing it specifically so nobody, not my ISP, not the government, and certainly not an academic researcher can look at my payload.
That is a very valid reaction.
Even if they don't know my original IP address because of the Tor circuit. Looking at the contents of my data feels like a massive violation of the network spirit.
Your reaction mirrors the intense debate within the academic community at the time. Deploying deep packet inspection on an anonymizing network is an ethical minefield.
Because you could accidentally figure out who they are?
Exactly. Knowing the destination IP address combined with the contents of the payload can easily de-anonymize a user.
Right. If you capture a packet going to a highly specific niche forum, and the payload contains a unique login credential,
or a highly specific message, you might be able to figure out who sent it, completely unraveling the protection Tor offers.
So how did the researchers avoid doing that?
To navigate this, the researchers had to invent a rigorous on-the-fly logging policy.
By on the fly, you mean they had to promise not to save the raw data to a hard drive where it could be subpoenaed or leaked later?
Much more than just a promise. They engineered the system to obfuscate all the original destination IP addresses in real time.
Oh, in real time. Where?
Within the volatile memory of the server, before anything was ever written to a log file.
That's smart.
They programmed their DPI engine to only extract the aggregated, high-level statistics they needed.
Things like what?
Things like the protocol type, the size of the data flow, and the general geographical location of the destination. Nothing personally identifiable.
So it operates somewhat like a census taker who knocks on your door.
That's a good way to put it.
They ask you how many people live in your house and their general age brackets, but they explicitly refuse to write down your name, your exact street address, or your social security number.
Exactly. They just take the demographic tally and immediately throw away the personal identifiers.
Got it.
Once those broad statistics were extracted and tallied, the raw data packets were instantly discarded. They did not keep any historical record of the specific IP addresses involved in the communications.
So they basically built a system that legally and technically couldn't remember anything sensitive.
Right. This real-time sanitization, layered on top of the anonymity already provided by the Tor circuit, ensured that they did not compromise individual user privacy while still generating the macro-level dataset they needed.
With this ethical wiretap securely in place and the data flowing, they start categorizing the traffic.
The fun part.
given the intense reputation of anonymizing networks, you would naturally assume the biggest anomaly they found in all those terabytes of data would be something highly sensitive.
You would think so.
Right, like an encrypted political manifesto, a massive database leak from a whistleblower, or communications from a restricted zone.
But the most glaring anomaly they encountered wasn't political or sensitive at all.
What was it?
It was a massive, mysterious black hole of bandwidth.
Yeah.
The very first thing that jumped out at them during the initial data processing was a staggering amount of sheer noise.
Just junk data.
Essentially, yes. The network was drowning in failed connections. They made a methodological decision to discard any data flows that generated fewer than 4 packets.
Fewer than 4 packets. To explain that for the listener, we need to quickly touch on how computers actually start talking to each other.
Using the Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP.
Right. It's not like turning on a radio. It requires a formal introduction.
It requires what is called the TCP three-way handshake. Think of it like a very formal telephone call. Your computer sends a SYN packet, which is basically dialing the number and waiting for the phone to ring.
And the other side.
The receiving computer, if it's available, sends back a SYN ACK packet saying, "Hello, I am here and ready to talk."
And then my computer has to confirm.
Finally, your computer sends an ACK packet back saying, "Great, I heard you, let's begin the conversation." Only after that 3-step dance does any actual data get transmitted.
So if a data flow is fewer than 4 packets, it means my computer dialed the number, but the other side never answered.
Or maybe they answered, but you immediately hung up before saying anything. Exactly that kind of behavior.
And how much of the network was just this?
Astonishingly, these unsuccessful, aborted, or unanswered connection attempts represented a full 40% of all the connections established through their exit nodes.
40%. Almost half of all the connection attempts on Tor were just computers dialing numbers and getting no answer.
Yes.
That is an incredibly inefficient use of network resources.
Yeah.
What causes that kind of massive systemic failure?
The researchers immediately recognized this as highly symptomatic of peer-to-peer file sharing applications, specifically BitTorrent.
Oh, because BitTorrent clients are just constantly reaching out to people.
Exactly. They are aggressively programmed to constantly hunt for peers. They're endlessly firing out SYN packets, those initial hello messages, trying to connect to other computers that might have a piece of the file they want.
And I guess a lot of those computers just aren't there anymore.
Right. Often those peers have already gone offline, changed IP addresses, or are simply too bogged down with other connections to accept a new one. The result is a massive storm of unanswered ringing phones.
Okay, so after they clear away that 40% cloud of purely useless connection noise, they start looking at the successful data flows.
The actual functioning traffic.
What did the deep packet inspection actually recognize right off the bat? Let's cover the knowns.
The known traffic aligns somewhat with expectations, but with a few notable shifts. Regular, unencrypted web traffic, HTTP, made up about 34% of the packets.
Okay, 34% is standard web browsing.
And it consumed roughly 36% of the bandwidth. That indicates a healthy amount of standard web browsing. Secure web traffic, SSL or HTTPS, accounted for around 5% of the total traffic size.
Now, 5% might sound low to a modern listener where almost everything is HTTPS today.
Right, but in 2010, that was actually a significant metric. It was a very telling jump from previous studies.
What did that jump indicate?
It indicated that Tor users were becoming more technically literate. They were realizing a critical vulnerability in the Tor architecture.
Which is that Tor only encrypts the journey up to the exit node, right?
Exactly. Once your data leaves the exit node to travel to the final web server, if it is not wrapped in its own HTTPS encryption, it is traveling out in the open.
So the exit node operator could easily eavesdrop on it.
Precisely. The rise in SSL showed users were protecting themselves against the very nodes providing their anonymity.
Smart. So we have standard web traffic and secure web traffic. What else was clearly identifiable?
Unencrypted, clear text BitTorrent traffic.
Wait, uninterpreted BitTorrent on Tor?
Yep. The DPI engine easily flagged this. It accounted for about 25% of the packets and 25% of the total bandwidth.
Wow.
And that was despite representing less than 5% of the total network flows.
That is a wildly disproportionate impact. A tiny sliver of users making BitTorrent connections were devouring a quarter of the entire network's capacity.
It highlights the sheer density of peer-to-peer file transfers compared to, just loading a web page.
It's 25% of the bandwidth is clear text BitTorrent.
But that 25% wasn't even the biggest surprise in the data set.
What was?
The OpenDPI engine completely failed to identify a massive 29% of all the packets passing through the nodes.
29% was just unknown.
Completely unknown. This entirely unclassified traffic was eating up over 25% of the total network size. Yet, similar to the cleartext BitTorrent, it was generated by only about 6% of the flows.
Let's visualize the scale of this problem. Imagine you are a customs inspector at a massive, bustling international shipping port.
Okay.
You have tens of thousands of small, lightweight boxes zipping past on the conveyor belts that represents the web traffic.
Sure. You have a handful of very heavy, clearly labeled pallets that say BitTorrent stamped on the side.
Right.
But then, interspersed on the belts, making up a full quarter of the entire cargo weight passing through your port, are these massive, incredibly heavy, entirely unmarked, completely sealed lead holding containers.
That's a perfect visualization.
And your $1 million security scanner has absolutely no idea what is inside them.
That was exactly the researcher's dilemma. The high volume of data transmitted by a very small number of connections strongly suggested that these sealed lead containers held a peer-to-peer protocol.
Just because of the sheer size of the flows.
Right. And given the era, it was highly likely to be BitTorrent. But the Deep Packet Inspection Engine was blind to it.
If the scanner is blind, how do they figure out what is inside without breaking their ethical promise and manually prying the containers open to read the data?
They executed a brilliant multi-step analytical deduction, culminating in a highly aggressive network hack.
Ooh, a hack. Let's break down step one. Step one was observing the external behavior of the packets. They analyzed the destination ports for these unclassified, heavy connections.
The door numbers we talked about earlier.
Exactly. They found that the ports being targeted were uniformly distributed across the entire available spectrum.
Meaning they weren't going to port 80 or port 443, they were just going everywhere.
Everywhere. As we established earlier, BitTorrent clients intentionally randomized their ports at installation to evade ISP throttling.
Which results in exactly this kind of chaotic, uniform distribution across the port range.
Right. So the doors these mysterious packets were trying to use looked completely random, which is a massive fingerprint for P2P software.
What was the next deductive step?
They computed the entropy of a sample of the payloads.
Entropy, like chaos.
In the context of computer science and cryptography, entropy is a measure of randomness or unpredictability within a data set.
Okay, so how does that help them?
Well, unencrypted text, like an HTML web page, has low entropy. It follows patterns, certain letters appear more often, words are structured. But when data is compressed or encrypted, the mathematical algorithms scramble the information, stripping away all discernible patterns. The resulting data looks like pure, unpredictable white noise.
It's the difference between looking at a photograph of a landscape versus looking at the static on a broken television screen.
Precisely. The computed entropy value for these unknown packets was exceptionally high.
Meaning it was definitely encrypted or compressed.
Yes. This confirmed that the data inside the packets was heavily compressed or encrypted. Since their standard DPI engine couldn't recognize any file headers, they deduced they were looking at an encrypted version of the BitTorrent protocol.
But academic research requires proof, not just strong deduction. To definitively prove what was inside those containers, they had to execute step 2.
The hijacking technique.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is easily the most cyberpunk element of the entire paper.
It is pretty aggressive.
How do you actively hijack a connection to prove what it is while still maintaining the ethical firewall of not reading the user's private data?
To understand the hijack, we need a brief primer on the architecture of a BitTorrent swarm. Let's do it. When you join a torrent to download a file, your client software doesn't know where the file is. It must first connect to a centralized server called a tracker.
The tracker acts like a matchmaking service, right? Or a digital yellow pages.
That's a great analogy. Your client says, "Hello, I'm looking for the pieces of this specific file." The tracker logs your IP address and responds with a list of IP addresses of other users' peers who currently have the pieces you need.
Okay, so once I have the phone book from the tracker, my computer stops talking to the tracker and starts dialing those peers directly to trade data.
That is the mechanism. Now, here was the critical vulnerability the researchers exploited.
Okay, what was it?
While the actual data transfer between the peers might have been heavily encrypted and causing that high entropy white noise, the initial request sent to the tracker.
Yeah.
And the tracker's response containing the list of IP addresses were almost always transmitted in clear, unencrypted text.
So the phone book itself wasn't locked.
The phone book was wide open. So the researchers configured their Tor exit nodes to perform a classic man-in-the-middle attack.
A man-in-the-middle attack. Walk me through exactly how they did that at the exit node.
When a Tor user sent a clear text request to a BitTorrent tracker through their exit node, the researcher's software intercepted the tracker's response on its way back to the user.
Okay.
Before passing the packet along, they maliciously rewrote the list of peers.
They altered the data.
Yes, they manipulated the data so that the very first peer IP address on the list was an instrumented BitTorrent client controlled by the researchers themselves.
That is incredibly sneaky. They basically intercepted the mail, opened the yellow pages, erased the first listing, and wrote in their own phone number before sealing it back up and handing it to the Tor user.
It was a very elegant trap. The Tor user's BitTorrent client, completely unaware of the manipulation, received the list, looked at the first entry, and dutifully reached out to initiate a connection with the researcher's machine.
Because it just trusts the tracker.
Right. And during that initial TCP handshake to establish the connection, the software running on the researcher's machine could effortlessly determine if the incoming request was attempting to negotiate an encrypted BitTorrent protocol connection.
Because the researcher's machine is pretending to be a peer, it just waits to see if the incoming caller speaks the secret encrypted language.
Exactly.
And what was the grand reveal? When they forced these mysterious, massive bandwidth hogs to shake hands with them, what were they?
The trap sprung perfectly. They discovered that a staggering 52.78% of these previously unknown handshakes were definitively encrypted BitTorrent.
Over half of the massive unknown black hole was just encrypted piracy.
Yes. When you take this newly unmasked encrypted BitTorrent traffic and combine it with the clear text BitTorrent traffic they had already identified,
The numbers must be huge.
the conclusion fundamentally altered the understanding of the network. Well over half of all the traffic carried over the entire Tor anonymizing network at that time was dedicated to the BitTorrent protocol.
Over half the entire network. And we really need to emphasize why this specific statistic matters to you, the listener, and to the health of the internet as a whole.
That's a critical point.
Tor is not a massive corporate infrastructure backed by Google or Amazon with endless racks of fiber optic cables. It is a fragile volunteer network.
Completely volunteer run.
It runs on the goodwill of university students, privacy advocates, and tech enthusiasts donating their personal residential bandwidth.
It operates on a principle of shared scarcity.
Exactly. And this incredibly heavy, relentless load of peer-to-peer file sharing creates catastrophic latency. It slows the entire network down from a swift stream to a viscous crawl.
Right. The people downloading movies are effectively and severely punishing the journalists, the whistleblowers, and the dissidents.
The people living under oppressive regimes who actually rely on Tor's low-latency architecture for freedom of speech and basic physical safety.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the tragedy of the commons in the digital age. A highly specialized tool meticulously engineered for human rights was being overwhelmed and degraded by people trading entertainment files.
It's just sad, honestly.
It is. However, to fully understand human behavior, we must contextualize this finding. The researchers astutely point out that this immense peer-to-peer load inside Tor was merely a reflection of the macroeconomic trends of the broader internet at the time.
Right. 2010 was a very specific era in internet history.
It was the peak of the file-sharing Cold War.
Wild West.
In the late 2000s, firms managing global internet traffic reported that peer-to-peer protocols accounted for more than 50% of all internet traffic in Europe, and similar numbers globally.
Wow, just everywhere.
The transition from older, easily targeted networks like LimeWire or Napster to the decentralized swarm of BitTorrent was complete.
But simultaneously, anti-piracy consortiums were ramping up aggressive legal campaigns.
Exactly. They were monitoring public torrent swarms and sending out millions of legal threats and fines.
Which drove the users to Tor.
Yes. This intense pressure drove everyday internet users to seek out anonymization tools.
Right.
They searched for a way to hide from copyright lawyers, and they found Tor.
So if the network is fundamentally clogged up by this massive tide of BitTorrent file sharers, it leads to a very natural assumption about the rest of the traffic.
It is.
You would assume that the actual web browsing on Tor, the HTTP traffic, that 34% we discussed earlier, must be deeply nefarious.
That's the logical leap most people make.
The logic is simple. If you are willing to put up with a network that is bogged down by crushing latency just to look at a web page, you must be doing something incredibly secret, highly illegal, or deeply subversive.
It makes sense on paper.
But when the researchers aimed their analytical tools at the HTTP data, the results defied all expectations.
Completely defied them. The HTTP data revealed a landscape that was shockingly mundane.
But wait, analyzing web traffic presented another hurdle, didn't it?
It did. They couldn't read the whole web page a user is downloading without blatantly violating the privacy protocols we discussed earlier.
Right, they can't just read people's emails or forum posts.
So they relied on two distinct privacy-preserving techniques: analyzing the HTTP content type header and conducting a complementary test using a software library called libmagic.
Let's break down LibMagic, because that sounds like a fascinating tool. If they can't read the whole payload, how do they know what the file is?
They utilized a method of localized sampling. They extracted just the first 10 bytes of every HTTP response payload and parsed it through libmagic.
Just 10 bytes. That's almost nothing.
It's tiny. This tool is designed to identify magic numbers.
Magic numbers.
Yes, which are highly specific, standardized digital signatures placed at the very beginning of a file's code that universally identify its format.
Oh, like a file extension, but baked into the code.
Exactly. For instance, a JPEG image file always starts with a specific sequence of hexadecimal bytes.
So the tool just looks for that specific sequence.
They determined that analyzing just 10 bytes was the perfect trade-off. It was enough data to accurately detect the file type, but far too little data to reconstruct an image, read a paragraph of text, or compromise the user's actual content.
It is the digital equivalent of taking a tiny single-drop sip from a massive bowl of soup. That one drop is enough to tell you if it's tomato or chicken noodle, but it prevents you from consuming the person's entire meal to find out.
A very grounded analogy.
Yeah.
And the results of this 10-byte sampling proved that the soup was remarkably standard.
What were they downloading?
Images, JPEGs, GIFs, PNGs made up 31.7% of the content. Text and HTML files made up 27.9%.
Which indicates standard everyday web browsing behavior. A user navigates to a page, the browser requests the text framework, and then it requests the images to populate the page.
Exactly.
But there had to be some anomalies in the file types, considering the environment.
There were deviations from standard public internet averages. Applications which in this context usually meant compressed archives like RAR or ZDI files or executable programs represented a hefty 18%.
Okay, that's a bit high. What else?
Furthermore, 6% of the traffic originated from direct download link providers, commonly known as DDLs.
Like RapidShare or Megapload back in the day?
Precisely. The researchers theorized this was an adaptive behavior. As peer-to-peer networks became more dangerous due to copyright monitoring, some users shifted to downloading large files directly from centralized file hosting websites over HTTP.
Ah, because those connections were harder for anti-piracy groups to monitor externally compared to a public torrent swarm.
Exactly.
What about rich media? Because again, the defining characteristic of Tor for a normal user is that it is excruciatingly slow. The idea of trying to stream video over a 3-hop encrypted circuit sounds like an exercise in pure frustration.
The presence of rich media was perhaps the most surprising finding in the HTTP analysis.
Really? How much was there?
Flash content, which remember powered almost all interactive web elements in video players like YouTube, in 2010 made up 11.11% of the traffic.
Wow.
And video files accounted for another 2.4%.
So almost 13.5% for Flash and video combined. That might not sound overwhelming by today's streaming standards, but in the context of Tor's historical latency.
It was a revelation. It proved definitively that the slow speeds were not deterring users from attempting to consume Web 2.0 rich media.
They were just stubborn.
They were stubbornly pushing high-bandwidth video streams through the delicate onion routing network.
Unbelievable. So we've mapped out the types of files flowing through the network, but that only tells us half the story. If they are downloading images in Flash, we need to know where they are getting them from.
The destinations.
Right. Did the researchers look at the actual domain names to see if these users were visiting hidden dark web forums or just regular public websites?
They did. To map the destinations, they extracted nearly 4 million unique domain names from the HTTP headers.
4 million. How do you even categorize that?
They categorized this massive list without manually reviewing millions of websites. They ran the domains through the Trend Micro online URL query service.
Which is like an enterprise-grade web categorization tool.
Right. The resulting breakdown looked nearly indistinguishable from a statistical snapshot of the regular, non-anonymized internet.
Walk us through the top categories.
Search engines and web portals dominated, taking the #1 spot at 14.4%.
So people are connecting to Tor, absorbing all that latency just to go to Google, Yahoo, or Bing and search for everyday information.
Exactly. Pornography ranks second at 11.5%.
Okay, well, notable, this is hardly surprising in the context of anonymity. Adult content has historically driven the adoption of privacy tools.
Because users inherently desire their browsing history in this category to remain unlinked to their real identity.
Right, what was third?
Computers and internet technology sites followed closely at 11.4%.
And what really caught my eye in the paper, social networking was the fourth most popular category at 9.5%. I have to pause and point out how profoundly bizarre this sounds when you think about the friction involved. It is the equivalent of discovering that a highly secure, top-secret, heavily fortified underground military bunker is primarily being used by civilians to drink lattes and scroll through their Facebook feeds.
It's a great image.
Why would a user intentionally route their connection through 3 different countries, crippling their bandwidth just to check a social network?
The researchers propose a fascinating dual reality to explain the social networking traffic. On one hand, there is the highly publicized noble use case.
During the late 2000s and early 2010s, particularly around the events of the Arab Spring, online social networks were vital organizational tools for dissidents, right?
Yes. The paper specifically cites Iranian protesters utilizing these platforms to coordinate decentralized actions and political opposition groups using them to distribute evidence of state persecution.
In those specific scenarios, routing Facebook through Tor is quite literally a matter of life and death, as local ISPs were actively monitoring and arresting users connecting to those domains.
The anonymity provides the essential shield required to speak out against a state power.
But the data suggests that's only a fraction of the story.
A very small fraction.
Yeah.
The researchers cross-referenced this finding with geographical data, which we will discuss later, and noted that the relatively low number of Tor users situated in politically sensitive or heavily censored countries strongly argues in favor of a much more pedestrian explanation.
Which is?
It is highly probable that a massive segment of these social networking users were simply everyday corporate employees.
You're kidding.
They were using Tor as a crude but effective tool to bypass their company's internal firewall policies so they could chat with friends or check their timelines during work hours.
Wow. So we have thousands of people risking the stability and performance of a vital, globally necessary human rights tool merely to check their social media while they're supposed to be filling out corporate spreadsheets.
It perfectly illustrates a core tenet of technology deployment. A tool will ultimately be used in the manner that fulfills the immediate desires of its user base.
Which rarely aligns perfectly with the idealistic vision of its creators.
And crucially, touching back on your earlier point about nefarious activity, the categorization data completely dismantled the prevailing myth of the network.
The dark web myth.
Yes. The researchers found that sites categorized by Trend Micro as containing illegal contents constituted less than 1% of the total HTTP traffic.
Wait, less than 1%?
Less than 1%.
That completely upends the narrative. The whole dark web, black market mythos that dominates the media's portrayal of anonymizing networks is, at least in terms of raw traffic volume analyzed in this comprehensive study, a statistical rounding error.
Precisely. The vast majority of web browsing conducted on the Tor network was undeniably and somewhat disappointingly mundane.
So if the web traffic is just people browsing Facebook and Google, that leads us right back to the elephant in the room.
The BitTorrent users.
The ones chewing up a quarter of the network's bandwidth to pirate files. If they are the primary threat to the network's stability, are they a monolithic group? Are all these file sharers equally to blame for degrading the architecture?
It's a great question. The researchers decided to dig deeper into the mechanics of this piracy, and what they uncovered is a textbook study in collective selfishness.
To fully grasp the nuance of what they found, we need to examine the specific mechanics of how a client can route BitTorrent traffic over the Tor network, right?
Yes. There are essentially 3 distinct operational modes.
Okay, what's the first mode?
The first mode utilizes Tor exclusively for tracker communication.
So just asking for the phone book.
Right. The user routes their initial connection through the Onion network to hide their real IP address from the centralized tracker when asking for the list of peers.
Then what?
However, when it comes time to execute the actual heavy lifting downloading the massive video file from other peers, the client connects directly over the regular, unencrypted public internet.
Okay, so you use the high-security secret tunnel just to get the list of phone numbers anonymously, but then you step out into the open street to actually make the calls and receive the packages.
Exactly. And the Tor project documentation explicitly stated that this was the only acceptable community-sanctioned way to use BitTorrent in conjunction with their network.
Because it's like, wait,
Right. Sending tiny kilobyte-sized text requests to a tracker consumes almost negligible bandwidth and doesn't harm the network's performance.
what's the second mode?
The second mode involves connecting to the tracker in the open internet, but using Tor to mask the high-bandwidth peer-to-peer data transfers.
That seems backwards.
The researchers dismiss this as highly illogical. If the centralized tracker already logged your real IP address, hiding from the peers provides very little actual security against anti-piracy monitors.
Which brings us to the third and most destructive mode.
The third mode is full tunneling. The user configures their client to hide from both the tracker and the peers. Every single byte of data the tracker requests, the peer handshakes, and the gigabytes of actual file chunks is forced through the 3-hop Tor circuit.
Using Tor for full content distribution, this is the behavior that drags the entire network to a grinding halt.
Yes.
So the researchers have this massive pool of BitTorrent traffic. How did they actually differentiate between the users playing by the rules and the users destroying the network?
They repurposed that same ingenious man-in-the-middle hijacking trick we discussed earlier, but this time they looked at a different piece of data.
Okay, what data?
When they intercepted the tracker request and forced a peer to connect to their controlled machine, they didn't just check if the connection was encrypted. They analyzed the origin IP address of that incoming connection.
Ah.
If the peer connected to the researcher's machine from a standard commercial ISP IP address, say Comcast or Deutsche Telekom, the researchers knew the user was operating in mode 1.
Because they were stepping out into the open street for the download.
Exactly. They were only using Tor to talk to the tracker, but downloading over the open internet. They were playing by the community rules.
Building on that logic, if the incoming connection came from an IP address that belonged to a known Tor exit node?
Then the researchers then caught them red-handed. An incoming connection from an exit node meant the user was forcing their massive peer-to-peer data transfer through the Onion routing network.
They were engaged in full content distribution.
Yes.
So what did the final breakdown look like? Are Tor users fundamentally malicious bandwidth hogs who don't care about the network?
The empirical data offered a surprising defense of the average user. The analysis revealed that a robust 73% of BitTorrent users interacting with Tor were actually playing by the rules.
Wait, really? 73%?
Yes. They restricted their Tor usage to tracker communication only. They were using the tool responsibly and safely within its intended capacity.
Wait, if 73% of the pirates are actually following the rules and preserving the network's bandwidth, that means...
That leads directly to a staggering mathematical conclusion. The catastrophic network overload that 25% to 50% of all Tor bandwidth being devoured by BitTorrent traffic was entirely generated by a deeply selfish minority comprising just 27% of the BitTorrent user base.
That's insane.
This incredibly small fraction of overall network users was pushing gigabytes of file fragments through the delicate Onion routers, severely degrading the performance for everyone else on the planet.
It is infuriating. It's the ultimate example of a few bad actors ruining a public good for millions.
It really is.
But examining that 27% makes you deeply curious. What exactly are they downloading that makes them so intensely desperate for absolute anonymity?
That's the million-dollar quote.
Why are they willing to suffer Tor's agonizingly slow download speeds and brazenly violate the community guidelines?
The researchers possessed the exact same curiosity, and their methodology allowed them to peer into the specific desires of these users.
How did they do that?
While intercepting the clear text tracker requests, they systematically collected info hashes.
What's an info hash?
An info hash is a unique cryptographic alphanumeric string that acts as an unforgeable identifier for a specific torrent file.
Like a barcode for a movie or song?
Exactly. Over the course of the study, they amassed a database of nearly 80,000 unique info hashes.
Wow.
They then built an automated script to take those identifiers and query popular publicly accessible torrent indexing websites like the Pirate Bay or Meninova to translate the hash into the actual file name being downloaded.
And what was the culmination of this massive unmasking effort? Were these users risking the network to distribute highly classified corporate documents, banned revolutionary texts, software exploits?
Reality was starkly bifurcated. First, it is crucial to highlight that a massive 35.7% of these info hashes simply could not be found on any public search engine.
Okay, so over a third were totally secret.
The researchers deduced that these hashes belonged to BitTorrent darknets. In the 2010 piracy ecosystem, darknets were highly exclusive, invite-only private tracker communities.
Oh, right, the private torrent sites.
Yes. These groups strictly monitor user ratios, how much you uploaded, versus downloaded, and specialized in high-quality, zero-day releases of copyrighted material.
So over a third of the traffic is super secret, highly organized private piracy rings. It makes sense why they would use Tor. The users in these darknets are acutely aware they are engaging in organized, highly illegal copyright infringement.
And that intense paranoia drives them to mandate extreme anonymity, even from their fellow peers.
What about the majority of the stuff the researchers could identify, the public downloads?
The public downloads were a testament to mainstream pop culture consumption. The most frequently downloaded items overwhelming the Tor network were newly released Hollywood movies and mainstream television shows.
Like what? What were the top hits?
At the precise time of the data collection in early 2010, the most popular torrents crippling the anonymizing network were the Robert Downey Jr. movie Sherlock Holmes and broadcast television shows like Heroes, Dr. House, and Desperate Housewives.
The sheer irony here is so thick, it's almost structural.
It's pretty funny.
Think about the technological lineage of this system. Tor is built on military-grade, complex, multi-layer onion routing cryptography.
Yes.
It was originally conceptualized and developed by the United States Naval Research Laboratory specifically to protect sensitive U.S. government intelligence communications online.
That's right.
And in 2010, it is being actively deployed at the direct cost of network stability and potentially the safety of vulnerable activists globally to slowly pirate a standard definition episode of a prime-time medical drama.
Dr. House needs his bandwidth.
It is the ultimate absurd testament to human priorities.
It is a profound, almost tragic irony.
Yeah.
Yet, as the researchers continued their analysis, they discovered that this selfish behavior wasn't solely confined to BitTorrent pirates.
There's more.
Oh yeah. They uncovered an entirely different demographic of users who were actively undermining Tor's core architectural security, not to download television shows, but simply to achieve a marginally faster internet connection.
This brings us to a fascinating subsection of the paper, the concept of tunneling. We established meticulously at the start of this deep dive that Tor relies on a strict three-hop circuit entry, middle, and exit to ensure that no single node knows both the sender and the destination.
That is the core rule.
But apparently, some users decided that 3 hops were just too much friction.
Exactly. These users intentionally altered the open source code of their Tor client software to execute what is technically known as a Tor tunnel or a one-hop proxy.
How does that work?
Instead of negotiating a complex secure circuit through 3 random global nodes, they instructed their client to completely bypass the entry and middle nodes.
And do what?
And initiate a direct single-hop connection straight to a Tor exit node.
They'd just skip the first 2 layers of the onion entirely.
Yeah.
But why would anyone do that? The entire value proposition of Tor is the 3 layers. If you drop the middle hops, the exit node knows exactly who you are and where you are going. You completely vaporize your anonymity.
You do willingly trade away strong cryptographic anonymity, yes. But you have to view it through the lens of a different user profile.
Okay, what do they get out of it?
In return for sacrificing that deep anonymity, you receive a free, highly available encrypted SOCKS proxy that operates with drastically lower latency than the full Tor network.
Let's clarify what a SOCKS proxy is for the listener, because it's a specific technical term. How does it differ from just using a normal web proxy or a VPN?
Think of a standard web proxy as a specialized courier who only delivers letters. It only handles HTTP traffic. If you try to give it a package, like a video game connection or an email protocol, it refuses.
And a VPN?
A VPN is like putting your entire house inside a secure tunnel. All traffic from every application goes through it.
Okay.
A SOCKS proxy sits perfectly in the middle. It is a lower-level, highly versatile courier. It doesn't care what kind of application you are running, a web browser, a chat client, a custom script. It will blindly accept any data packet you hand it, wrap it up, and forward it to the destination.
So these users are hijacking Tor exit nodes to use them as high-speed, versatile couriers. But if they aren't hiding from governments, what is the use case?
For many users, particularly those not facing state-level adversaries, this is an incredibly practical trade-off. They might simply be trying to bypass a strict local content filter.
Like a university blocking gaming servers or a corporation blocking streaming sites.
Exactly. Or they might just want to hide their home IP address from the specific website they are visiting to avoid targeted advertising, while ensuring the connection between their laptop and the proxy node is encrypted against local snooping.
The analogy that comes to mind is ordering a high-security, heavily armed, armored truck convoy, complete with a lead guard car, the main vault truck, and a rear, heavily armed trail vehicle just to deliver a turkey sandwich.
I love that.
But then, to make sure the sandwich doesn't get soggy in traffic, you dismiss the front and back guard vehicles so the main truck can speed down the highway faster.
That's exactly what they are doing.
It completely nullifies the security protocol of the convoy, but hey, you get your sandwich 10 minutes quicker. But the technical question is, how did the researchers actually catch these users? If they're just making a direct connection, doesn't it just blend in and look like normal internet traffic hitting the server?
Catching them required a deep, granular understanding of Tor's internal communication protocols. The researchers designed their DPI engine to look for a highly specific internal control message called a relay begin cell.
A relay begin cell, what does that do?
When a standard, rule-abiding Tor client finishes its 3-hop circuit, it sends a relay begin cell down the tunnel. This cell is essentially a command instruction to the final exit node.
Telling it to do what?
Telling it to establish a standard TCP connection to the final destination website.
Okay, so it's the internal command that says, hey, exit node, I am ready. Please open a connection to google.com on my behalf.
Precisely. Now, in a legitimate, healthy 3-hop circuit, the exit node will only receive that relay begin command from a middle node.
Because it's passed down the chain.
Exactly. It should never receive it directly from a user.
Right.
And here's the architectural feature the researchers leveraged. The IP addresses of all legitimate Tor Onion routers are published in a publicly accessible, constantly updated central directory.
Ah, I see the trap.
It is brilliantly simple. The exit node can instantaneously check the IP address of the machine that is sending it the relay begin command.
Right.
If the command originates from an IP address that is listed in the public Tor directory, the exit node can safely assume the sender is a legitimate middle node and the 3-hop circuit is functioning correctly.
But if an exit node receives that relay begin instruction and it checks the public directory, and the sender's IP address is not on the list of known Tor nodes,
then the logic is inescapable. It means a normal user's personal computer is bypassing the network architecture and sending internal command structures directly to the exit node.
the user is actively cheating the system to steal proxy bandwidth.
Yes, they caught them red-handed, using the system's own administrative language against them.
By painstakingly cross-referencing incoming connections against historical archives of the Tor directory.
And they definitively isolated and identified 159 unique IP addresses that were explicitly and repeatedly abusing their exit nodes using this one-hop tunneling method.
It is genuinely fascinating how much parasitic abuse a volunteer network is forced to absorb.
It's a lot.
So we've spent a lot of time analyzing the what and the how, downloading desperate Housewives, bypassing corporate firewalls to check Facebook, stripping away encryption layers for speed. But who are these people?
That's the next big piece of the puzzle.
If a network is dominated by this specific profile of traffic, where do these users actually live?
To answer the geographical question, the researchers realized their exit nodes were useless.
Because of the onion routing.
Right. By design, an exit node only sees the middle node. It has no visibility into the user's origin. To map the user base, they had to pivot their methodology.
What did they do?
They set up and heavily monitored a Tor entry point, a node designed specifically to be the first hop. They ran this entry point for a single 24-hour period.
And how many people connected?
During that window, they captured 7,575 unique client IP addresses, initiating connections to the Tor network.
And when they mapped those IP addresses to their countries of origin, what did the geopolitical breakdown look like?
The concentration was heavily skewed toward the West. More than 70% of all client connections originated from just 10 countries.
What was number one?
The dominant country, by a significant margin, was Germany, accounting for 14.7% of the total user base.
Wow, Germany.
The United States followed in second place at 12.8%. Poland ranked third at 11%, with Romania at 7.7% and the Russian Federation at 7.3%.
We have to dig into the why behind those numbers because they tell a very specific story about the internet in 2010.
They really do.
The United States being high on the list makes intuitive sense. Massive population, high broadband penetration, and a large population of tech-savvy early adopters. But Germany, taking the #1 spot by a wide margin, requires historical context. Why were the Germans flocking to Tor?
The German dominance is directly correlated to the piracy discussion we had earlier.
Oh, really?
Yes. In the late 2000s, Germany implemented incredibly draconian copyright enforcement mechanisms. Law firms developed automated systems to monitor public BitTorrent swarms, logging the IP addresses of German citizens downloading media.
And then what?
They would then issue what is known in the German legal system as an Abmahnung, a formal cease and desist letter carrying exorbitant automated fines,
How much are we talking about?
often demanding thousands of euros for a single downloaded movie. The risk of standard peer-to-peer file sharing in Germany was financially devastating.
So the German users weren't necessarily seeking political asylum. They were seeking financial asylum from aggressive copyright troll lawyers.
Exactly. That perfectly aligns with the massive volume of BitTorrent traffic the researchers found.
But what jumps out at me even more is what is missing from the top of that list. Where are the citizens of countries famous for heavy state-level internet censorship?
That absence is the most striking sociological finding of the demographic analysis. China, a nation globally synonymous with the Great Firewall and uncompromising internet censorship, accounted for only 5.8% of the connections.
Only 5.8%.
The researchers highlight that this represents a precipitous drop from academic studies conducted just a couple of years prior, where China reliably ranked as the second largest source of Tor traffic.
Wow.
Across the board, there was a stark, measurable absence of politically sensitive countries dominating the top ranks of usage.
Which forcefully reinforces the narrative that, at least in this specific statistical snapshot in 2010, the Tor network was primarily functioning as a Western utility for privacy, proxying, and piracy, rather than serving as the digital lifeline for dissidents in oppressive regimes that its creators envisioned.
It heavily skews the data in that direction, certainly. But this raises an important question regarding network access.
What's the question?
If state-level actors, like the government engineers managing the Great Firewall of China, actively monitor the Tor directory and systematically block the IP addresses of all public Tor entry nodes, how are users inside those borders supposed to connect in the first place?
Right, because if you can't reach the first node, the entire network is dead to you.
Exactly.
It's a glaring structural flaw. If the public list of Tor nodes is available to an exit node so it can catch a user cheating the system with a one-hop tunnel, that exact same list is available to a Chinese government censor.
They just download the list every morning, feed it into their national firewall block list, and Tor is instantly inaccessible.
So how did the Tor engineers attempt to solve that fundamental vulnerability?
They introduced an architectural workaround known as bridges. Bridges are essentially stealth entry nodes.
Stealth nodes, how do they work?
They are volunteer routers, functioning exactly like public nodes, but with one critical distinction. Their IP addresses are intentionally withheld from the main public Tor directory.
The operating logic being, if the censor cannot discover the IP address, they cannot proactively block it.
A solid theory.
But it creates a new paradox. If the bridges are unlisted and secret, how does a legitimate user inside a censored country find them so they can connect?
The Tor project established specialized distribution channels. A user could visit a specific HTTPS website or send an email to an automated responder from a trusted provider like Gmail and request a bridge.
Oh, okay, so there's a central authority handing them out.
Yes, but the developers recognized they had to be incredibly cautious. If the automated system handed out the entire list of thousands of bridges to anyone who asked, the censors would simply send an email, get the list, and block them all in one sweep.
Right, you can't just publish the secret list.
To prevent this, Tor restricted the distribution realm. The system was designed to only dispense a very small subset, typically just 3 bridge IP addresses per unique requester IP address within a specific time window.
Okay, so they implemented a strict drip feed. You only get a tiny handful of addresses at a time. It's a rate-limiting defense mechanism designed specifically to prevent an adversary from rapidly scraping the entire database.
That sounds like a robust operational security measure.
It does. Did it work?
It sounds robust in theory, but when the researchers pressure tested it, they uncovered a catastrophic vulnerability in how this distribution mechanism was actually implemented.
What did they find?
They hypothesized that they could bypass the IP rate limit, and they executed the attack with alarming ease. They coded a very simple automated script, a web crawler designed to continuously request bridges from the distribution website.
Okay, but wouldn't the server just block their IP address after the first three?
Here is the brilliant or perhaps deeply cynical aspect of their methodology. They routed their attack crawler through the Tor network itself.
Wait a minute. Are you saying they weaponized Tor to attack Tor's own infrastructure?
Effectively, yes. The automated crawler connected to the Tor network, built a circuit, and sent an HTTP request to the bridge distribution server.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Because the request emerged from a Tor exit node, the bridge server logged the request under the exit node's IP address.
Right.
The crawler would collect its 3 bridges, tear down the circuit, build a brand new circuit exiting from a different exit node, and ask again.
Oh, that is devastating. Because the Tor architecture perfectly masks the origin of the request, the bridge server was completely blind.
Completely blind.
It had no idea that it was the exact same script knocking on the door over and over again.
Yep.
It just saw thousands of ostensibly different users asking for help.
Exactly. Astoundingly, the bridge server infrastructure was not configured to block or flag rapid requests coming from known Tor exit nodes.
It just treated them like regular IPs.
Yes. And perhaps even more critically, the distribution page lacked any form of CAPT, CHA, or secondary verification mechanism to prove that a human, rather than a bot, was making the request.
So the researchers' automated script just sat there, endlessly spinning through different global exit nodes, politely asking for 3 bridges at a time, and the server blindly handed over the keys to the kingdom.
Unendingly. In a mere 7 days of running this simple script, researchers effortlessly harvested 3,393 unique bridge IP addresses.
Over 3,000 in a week.
To put that in perspective, any dedicated adversary, a hostile government intelligence agency, a heavily funded anti-piracy group, or a malicious ISP could have easily deployed this exact same low-cost technique to continuously scrape the database.
They could have actively mapped the hidden infrastructure and blocked the bridges as fast as volunteers could set them up, rendering the entire anti-censorship system useless?
It's a massive oversight.
That is a staggering architectural flaw. Did they analyze the data they stole? Did they figure out where these hidden bridges were actually located geographically?
They did. And the demographic breakdown of the bridges largely mirrored the general user base, but with one massive perplexing anomaly.
Okay, what was it?
31.5% of the bridges were physically located in Germany.
Which tracks perfectly given they had the most users.
And the Tor client software actively encourages users in free internet zones to configure their machines to act as bridges for others. So that makes sense.
Right.
However, the second highest concentration was entirely unexpected. 16.3% of all the bridges they discovered were assigned to IP addresses located inside China.
But wait, how does that make any sense? If China employs deep packet inspection to aggressively block all public Tor nodes, how can a user inside China operate a bridge?
That is the exact paradox the researchers highlight in the paper. The architecture requires that a bridge, serving as the first hop, must be able to successfully connect to a public middle node to build the rest of the circuit out to the open internet.
Because it's still just the first step in the 3-step chain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Since the Great Firewall blocks outbound connections to those public nodes, the researchers concluded that the operational status of these Chinese bridges was highly suspect.
So they were broken.
It is incredibly likely that those bridges, despite being registered in the database, were completely isolated. They couldn't actually connect to the rest of the Tor network, rendering them effectively useless as a tool for bypassing censorship.
Man, that is grim. So we have reached the end of the data, and what an incredible journey it has been. So what does this all mean? We've covered a massive amount of conceptual and technical ground today.
We really have.
We started with the cinematic, idealistic assumption that Tor is a pristine, high-security sanctuary utilized almost exclusively by high-level political dissidents and journalists operating in danger zones.
The James Bond myth.
And we end with a picture that is vastly, almost comically, more complicated.
It paints a portrait of a remarkable technological achievement struggling immensely under the crushing weight of its own broad utility.
That's the core of it. The researchers comprehensively proved that Tor is an incredible piece of software engineering, capable of executing remarkable, mathematically sound anonymization.
The tech itself works.
It works, but Its day-to-day operational reality during this era was entirely dominated by unglamorous use cases. It was choked by BitTorrent traffic, flooded with perfectly mundane web surfing and Facebook checking.
Utilized for widespread copyright infringement.
Yes, and plagued by users actively subverting the core security architecture just to shave a few milliseconds off their connection speeds.
And this study serves as a vital, enduring reminder to you, the listener, about the fundamental nature of technological deployment.
Which is?
The structural design and the ideological intent of a system never dictate its actual use in the wild.
Absolutely.
Human behavior, whether that behavior is driven by laziness, a desire to avoid copyright fines for downloading movies, or simply trying to dodge a corporate firewall so you can message your friends, will always, invariably, shape the realities of the network.
To truly understand technology, you have to look past the marketing brochures, the noble founding intentions, and the cultural mythology. You have to rigorously analyze the raw data.
You have to look at what people are actually doing.
It's the ultimate real-world lesson in unintended consequences. You design an unbreakable, mathematically perfect lock, specifically to protect fundamental human rights, and the general public immediately uses it to hide their downloaded episodes of Desperate Housewives.
Exactly.
It is a testament to the fact that humans will be humans no matter what tools you give them. It is endlessly fascinating.
It is indeed. But before we wrap up this deep dive, if we connect this empirical reality back to the bigger theoretical picture, these findings raise an entirely different, perhaps more philosophical question for you to consider.
Oh, I like this. Leave them with something to think about.
We've spent the last hour meticulously analyzing how this massive volume of mundane, selfish traffic, the BitTorrent hogs, the social media scrollers, the tunneling cheers, acted as a severe burden on the network's resources.
Right, they were dragging it down.
But think critically about the fundamental concept of anonymity itself. Cryptographic anonymity requires a crowd.
Meaning?
You cannot hide if you are the only person standing in an empty room, no matter how good your disguise is.
Oh, wow.
So if privacy tools are inevitably destined to be flooded by mundane, everyday, or even selfish use cases, does the sheer overwhelming volume of that digital noise actually provide better, thicker, more impenetrable cover for the few dissidents who truly need the anonymity to survive?